Hello, I'm Gerald Varela, and I'm with Miami's community newspaper. And in today's installment of Back Corner Comics, we're going to be talking about Kazuo Umezz, or Kazuo Umezz. I don't really know why the covers here says Umezz, but when you Google his name, it says Umezz. But regardless, he recently passed this week, and it's a big loss to the horror manga world. He's considered the god of horror manga. If you look up Junji Ito's inspirations, you'll see that he's number one. He really established a lot of tropes, and he brought in a lot of interesting things that we now regard as horror manga. So one of the things I want to say before we start, he didn't only do horror manga, he also did a Ultraman manga, which I believe it was the very first Ultraman manga. And I hope that we do get that here in the States. And to almost double back, we're going to be talking about volumes of his work that you can pick up here in the States that Viz has translated and put out. And as you can see, they're the wonderful hardcovers. But yeah, we lost Umezz, and it's a big loss. And I hope that he rests in peace. And today we're going to be talking about some of his better titles and some of the titles that have been deemed worthy by Viz to be released here. And as you can see, he gets the wonderful premium hardcover treatment for his titles. And I just think this Orochi manga just looks so fantastic. And there's 4 or 5 of these, I forget, and they all look amazing. And the presentation is awesome. So we'll just go ahead and flip through that one first, and then we'll work down in that order. So this is Orochi. And I feel like the best way to describe this series is being kind of episodic. I like to think this is Umezz's kind of version of EC Tales, where she's more or less the narrator and the characters within the story are the people that play within that story. So this is Orochi, and she has some sort of significance other than just kind of being present within the story, and that's pretty much it. Sometimes she's directly involved, other times she's just a spectator, and sometimes you'll see her on the first page and then you'll see her on the last page. I haven't read these stories, it's been a while, but they typically deal with obsession, murder, more psychological horror than anything, and that's kind of what Umezz does really good, is psychological horror. He does monster horror too, and we'll look at some of that stuff later on. There's some here. And as you can see, his art's just phenomenal. He does a really good job, and that's just a horrifying figure there. And these volumes sometimes have 2 stories, sometimes they have 3. This particular one, which is the first one, has 2, and as you can see, the first story is relatively small compared to the second one, but it makes for a fast read. And all in all, Orochi is a very good series to kind of follow through. You get her origin story at some point, and then the conclusion to all of it. This particular one I remember being very brutal. Yeah, it's about like this guy comes back from the dead to right the wrongs against him when he was alive, kind of situation. And this was my first experience with Umezz. Now, actually, that's not true. It was Caty Boy, which we're going to be looking at next. But this was very quickly after I read the first volume of Caty Boy, which we will look at now. I had to get more of his work, and I knew Viz was doing a big push to bring out all of his work here. And here's Caty Boy. And after reading this volume, I knew I had to read more of Umezz's work, and this is kind of like a fun yokai / horror plot. You can see here. And his lines are very bold, and you can tell that he was basing, like a lot of mangaka at the time, basing his style off of Osamu Tezuka's work. Here's Caty Boy. He enters the story, and he kind of battles these yokai monsters. I need to get the second volume to finish the story. But, you know, it's always a good excuse to reread the first volume when you get the second one. This is just creepy. One of the things I do not like about this volume in particular, this series, is the way Viz decided to bring them over. Some of the artwork is not good, and I imagine that they couldn't find better versions to scan, and that's fine. It's just a shame to spend, you know, a luxurious price on a book and then have line quality that's not so good. As you can see right there, the lines get very blurry. But also another thing about Umezz's career is that he was able to, it's so funky, he was able to kind of work within the shoujo manga industry, which shoujo is typically for younger girls. And he was able to really experiment with horror in those magazines because they were more open to experimentation as opposed to the shoujo, which was for young boys magazines. So it really allowed him to have a testing bed for stories and a variety of art. Let's look at this. Now tell me that ain't creepy. And I believe, yeah, these are all yokai. And this particular story is centered around where Caty Boy comes from. Just look at that. And so this is more of an outward monster of the week type of horror. There's a Buddha right here. I believe that's where he stays. Like, that's his home. This story is really good. The corny typical sack over your shoulder. Yeah, well, that's Caty Boy. 2 volumes. And here is My Name Is Shingo, which is their newest release they're putting out. I believe there's going to be 6 in total, and as of, I think last week, there's 3 volumes. And the presentation here is just phenomenal. And this particular story is more of a psychological story where you have a young boy named Satoru, whose father works at a factory. And God, look at this, guys. This is wonderful. But yeah, you have a young boy who's named Satoru, and come on, you guys, you got to pick this up. I mean, look at this. That's just phenomenal. But his name is Satoru, and his dad works at a factory, and they get this robot who comes in, and it starts off as just a typical little factory robot, right? But Satoru begins to play with its programming, and unbeknownst to him, he creates a sentient machine. And you kind of get the story from the machine's perspective, little by little. And Satoru ends up falling in love with a girl his age called Marin. And they basically, the both of them, start inputting code and start making this machine have sentience. And it's on, there's Marin. And it's a phenomenal love story. So it's one part love story, one part kind of horror of technology. As of right now, volume 3 does not get into the horror of the technology. It gets into more of the horror aspect of parents overloving their children, or overly ambitious people and what can happen to them at the workplace. and things like that. So it's more of like a psychological horror as of now. I imagine it's going to get a little bit more intense as the volumes come out. And the robot's called Monroe, and as you can see, there's a loving depiction of Marilyn Monroe. Let me see, there's a really good color spread, and you get these really nice narrative, like it's like these single page narratives in the chapter breaks. And what does it mean, you know? And it's like a repeat of these like little love stories, and it's very interesting, and I think this will eventually accumulate into a narrative. And so yeah, this is My Name Is Shingo, and all the volumes have, you know, a different color scheme with different textures on it. And you can see that Viz really cares about pushing out Umezzu's work in an interesting, attractive format, and just really good, very good. I'm very impressed by My Name Is Shingo, and I'm excited to eventually cover more. I think I'll do like an entire series review, so keep your eye out here at Back Corner Comics. Shameless plug, only at Miami's community newspapers. And so probably what Umezz is most known for, especially here in the States, is the drifting classroom. And this is, I believe, one of the first instances of a group of children being transported into an other world where they're not in control of their environment and things like that. That's kind of a popular trope in current anime and manga for certain titles. Nothing's coming to the top of my head right now, but it certainly is a popular trope. And there's 3 volumes of the, I mean, look how chunky this is. You know, if you like them chunky and you like them thick, Drifting Classroom is definitely for you. I know I like them chunky and I like them thick. And the horror here is really with the kids, being in this abstract environment where their thoughts and their fears come true. And then you get abusive adults. So teachers against children. It's kind of like Lord of the Flies in an abstract desert land. And it connects to the past in some very interesting ways. You can see this kid's getting absolutely harassed by an adult. And the horrors in that regard just get worse. I mean, there's a certain something I want to say. I don't recommend this if you don't like seeing kids being hurt. This is a series full of children being hurt by other children, by adults. It feels like commentary on the value of the innocence of children. It's really the only way I could kind of get through this series. At a certain point, kids are jumping from windows, and you have this kid who goes off into the desert by himself, and everyone's freaking out. They close the gate behind him, or the adults do. And so it's basically these kids are trying to survive on their own. And how do they survive in this hostile environment filled with hostile adults? Get some action-y stuff. I know there's some good stuff towards the end. There's a lot of stuff with, you know, older girls kind of abusing the younger children, and here you see a situation of that. They kind of take over briefly. There's like this government that's enacted by the older girls. It's kind of funny. And there's bits of action in here. You can see that the main character gets a little roughed up. So here's the kids. They start jumping, and I mean, you see it. I'm not going to show you guys, but you know, you see that stuff, and it's a hard pill to swallow. The horrors of this situation is kind of where the story goes. There's a little bit of monster stuff. There you go. There's the critter. I'd pee my pants if I saw something like that. But as you can see, it's very kind of narration heavy, relies a lot on the plot. this particular sequence to me is the most unsettling. You know, he's so scared by this thing that's coming to kill him that he abstractly thinks of himself as a chair for an instance. And I really think that is horrifying. And this is Drifting Classroom by Kazuo Umezz. And as of right now, these are all the series that you can pick up. Everything is complete minus My Name Is Shingo, which is going to be 6 volumes, like I said. As of right now, there is 3. Shuffle them down a little bit, make them look nice and pretty. And so, this is kind of in tribute to Kazuo Umezz. I think he was an amazing mangaka. I highly regard his work, and so do others. If you have a favorite horror mangaka, likelihood of Kazuo Umezz being their favorite mangaka is extremely high. Extremely high. And yeah, pick up his work. Viz has these lovingly curated hardcovers available. I totally recommend them. They definitely get a Back Corner Comics seal of approval, if there is such a thing. And yeah, on that note, I think we'll end it. My name is Gerald Varela. I'm with Miami's Community Newspapers, and this is Back Corner Comics.